Hey everybody, this is Alessio at the top of the episode to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Winfred Casters, listener and patron. Winfred writes, "Hi guys, congratulations on the 100th episode. You're pretty good. I listened to every one of your podcasts and wanted to share a short personal story as a big thank you. I started my Metal Gear journey back in 2001 when I was 14 and got to pick out a PC game at the store. I was deciding between two games and didn't know which one to pick when my dad helped me, and I went for the more digital puzzle-like game, in his words, for which I am forever grateful, because it turned out to be one of the greatest games ever, Metal Gear Solid. I replayed all the main Metal Gear games while I was recovering at home from major heart surgery back in 2017. Gladly, they found and removed the Foxdie virus. I am fully healthy now. Your podcasts were like having friends playing alongside me while I was passing the time, so I'd like to thank you so much for helping me get through 3 long months of recovery. Sincerely, Winfred, aka Pshew, pronounced like a blaster bullet from Star Wars, from Belgium." Winfred, thank you so very much. And if you want to support the show and be like Winfred, be sure to go to patreon.com/Metal Gear Mondays. Ladies, gentlemen, boys, and girls, welcome to another episode of Metal Gear Mondays, the Games Club style podcast covering all things Metal Gear from top to bottom, left to right, inside and out, in pseudo-historical recreational order. As sometimes I'm your host, Alessio Summerfield, and this week I'm very excited to present an interview with Kris Zimmerman Salter, otherwise known as the voice director on pretty much everything Metal Gear. And that is not me being hyperbolic. She has voice directed essentially every single piece of interactive content for this series. So this is a really, really interesting interview, and we absolutely loved having her on the show. Just as sort of a disclaimer up at the top, Sam was also on this episode. However, due to some technical difficulties and just issues with the connection, I, for the purposes of the edit, have re-recorded the questions that he asked, and sort of edited it to try to make it sort of seamless. So on this episode, it will sound like I'm just speaking with Kris on my own. However, during the actual day of, Sam was present, but again, just kind of due to the way that the tech kind of decided to play that day, we had to kind of pull an audible. And so, yeah, here we are with sort of this solo conversation. So we're very, very excited. Kris has many insights into some pretty amazing stuff. Outside of her time with Metal Gear, she's also been a long-time contributor to Hanna-Barbera, as well as a lot of Cartoon Network shows, a lot of other games, including Marvel's Spider-Man. She did a lot of work with Ryan Payton, who we had previously on the show, which 100% that episode was only made possible because of Kris, as well as some of the other interviews that are going to be coming down the pipe. So massive thank you to Kris, and we really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. For all things Metal Gear Mondays, you can go to MetalGearMondays.com or MetalGearSolidPodcast.com. That's going to have links to all of our social media platforms, as well as our Patreon and stuff like that. So we hope you guys go and check it out. Likewise, if you like what you're listening to, consider leaving a review on iTunes, particularly. That seems to be the one that kind of gives us the most cachet. But you can also share the show with friends on social media. Every little bit helps. So thank you guys so very much. And without further ado, Kris Zimmerman Salter. Yeah, let's get started. You were talking about Cam. Let's talk about that. When did you come to meet Mr. Cam Clark?
Well, I met Cam when I worked at Hanna-Barbera, and he came in to audition for, I believe it was Captain Planet, and he ended up getting the role of one of the villains whose name was Sludge. And then we grew to, have a great working relationship and work together over the years. And when Metal Gear came along, this is actually a very interesting casting story of Metal Gear. I was hired to direct it, and they hired a casting director from Torrance, California. Well, I grew up in Torrance, California, and it is not known for its voiceover community, shall we say. And I didn't know this person, and she worked in commercials, and it's a completely different medium, games versus commercials. And I thought, okay, we're having a week's worth of auditions. I said, I will agree to direct it, but I want to give you guys 20 names of people that I would like to call in for Metal Gear. And they said, okay, sure, just give us the names and we'll fit them into the schedule. Out of those 20 people, 19 of them were cast in Metal Gear. So it was a handpicked by me little tidbit that no one really knows about in the public, I don't believe. And I think there was only 20 or 21 roles in that first game. So all the characters that you heard there, with the exception of one minor older character, I don't remember the name of the character offhand, but with the exception of just one or two other people, were all my chosen few. And a very interesting story, and he may or may not deny this, but when David Hayter came in to audition for Snake, he had not seen a picture of him, but I had a picture of him. David Hayter came in and he was wearing like army camo pants, a white t-shirt, and he actually had a bandana on his head. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So it was like, wait, look at this.
While we were at the Renton City Retro this past weekend, David told a funny story, I guess. Jennifer Hale constantly takes credit for him being in Metal Gear, but he disputed it and said that Kris Zimmerman needs to take the credit. So
I thought you, Dave. Jennifer introduced me to David. She also guested on Captain Planet. I was looking for someone who could do a Russian character, and Jennifer was a good friend of his, and still is. But she did introduce me to David, and she might have brought his name up when I was like looking for these people. But no, I'm going to take the credit for that.
As you should. So, Kris, how did you get involved voice directing for Hanna-Barbera, of all people?
Well, I kind of tripped and fell into Hanna-Barbera and never left the industry. I was a college student. I went to Pepperdine, and I had an internship at the Amundsen Theater in downtown Los Angeles. It was in the publicity department, and I had a great boss. And when the internship was over, they hired me part-time, but then I graduated school and I needed to get a real job, right? So they couldn't afford to pay any more than part-time, so I would come in as any young 20-ish year old would and bring in my great ideas of who my boss should introduce me to. And when I went to school, we had a class called the Business of Acting, and in that class there was like agents, and there was a director named Gordon Hunt, who ended up being my mentor and dear friend over the years. He was the first actual voice director at Hanna-Barbera. Before that, the producers used to do it, or the writers, and he was hired to specifically just bring in the talent and direct the shows, all of Hanna-Barbera shows that were recorded. I went into my boss at the Amundsen one day and I said, what about Gordon Hunt? Can you introduce me to him? And he goes, oh, I know Gordy. And he called him up, and this is just strictly fate. They were looking for a production assistant that day. They were holding interviews, and I went, and I ended up getting the job because I could type about 124 words a minute. And they needed me to be a production assistant, typing scripts up from storyboards. And so I did that. And back in those days, cartoons were cyclical. So there was an annual cycle where in the winter months, the shows were done and I would be laid off for a couple months. So I did that for 2 years, worked at Hanna-Barbera, for 9 months, and then had a couple months off. And then it got to be, I'm getting older, I'm going to get married, I need a steady job. I need something that's going to be full time. And I went and worked at NBC for a little while. And then one day Gordon called because the person that was the talent coordinator at the time had left, and offered me that job. So I went back to Hanna-Barbera full time. And then eventually the casting director left, so I became the casting director. And then when Turner took over Hanna-Barbera, they did away with the role of recording director. And so Gordon left Hanna-Barbera, and I then started having the opportunity to direct a little bit. I started directing. I didn't know that I was going to love it. I loved working at Hanna-Barbera. I loved working with the actors. I loved casting. And I was preparing scripts for a show that we were recording on Saturdays because Neil Patrick Harris was in it. And he was doing Doogie Howser at the time, so we could only get him on Saturdays. And I'm just preparing everything, and it's about 5:30 in the afternoon, and I get a phone call, and it's Gordon, and he said, "I have pneumonia. You'll be fine." That's how I got my first show to direct. And I was terrified, and I went in there the next morning, and, I had TV stars in there, and I had great animation people in there, all who knew me, but not in that role. And we started recording, and I said, okay, let's go lines 1 through 43 or whatever the scene was. And they did it, and I'm listening, and I'm like, I think I want more of this there, more of that here. And then I said to them, okay, Neil, I need a little more of this on this line. Charlie, can you be snarkier here, or whatever my directions were. And then I said, take 2, and they did it. They did everything I asked. And I was like, ooh, this is kind of magic fun. So they became my orchestra, and I just started directing. And after several years, ended up deciding to take the leap of going freelance, and have been doing my own business since the late 90s. And I guess people seem to keep hiring me. So I guess that's good, right?
Yeah, I definitely noticed, Kris, going through your resume that you've been on quite a huge number of things. It's insane. So you've got to be doing something right?
I guess so, yeah.
So outside of voice directing, you've also had the pleasure of doing some voice work yourself. Could you tell us a little bit about how those came to be, and maybe how those opportunities presented themselves?
I don't pursue voice work on my own. I would rather be directing, but several times over the years, clients that I've been working with would want me to cameo in their games. I think it started on Metal Gear. I've been in a few of those. I don't even remember as what characters. I think I was a hooker that tortured Snake at one point early on in the series. And I've been on several others. Most recently, I did some cameo roles on the PS4 Spider-Man game that was produced by Insomniac. And it's fun. It's fun to do, but I don't pursue it as a living. I've had several. I mean, all of the experiences in voice acting have been fun for me. But one of my favorite things was to get killed by zombies in 2 of the Resident Evil games. That's my pride and joy right there.
That's amazing. Who did you voice in the Insomniac game? Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man.
I was a pedestrian. I was someone who called into the J. Jonah Jameson show. I was, I think her name was Edna from Edina, Minnesota. And I was a pedestrian, and I don't remember, probably a third voice as well.
Very cool. So I wanted to ask, just because we've spent so much time talking to voice actors and not a ton of time speaking with the folks who direct them, but seeing as we've got a full-fledged, honest-to-God, kick-ass voice director on our podcast, I wanted to ask kind of what your creative process was approaching a project. It seems like you have the script in front of you for far longer than some of these voice talents who kind of come in and maybe see the lines for the first time. Oh, okay. Perfect. So yeah, tell us about it.
Not necessarily. I try to get the script at least a day before, because I do like to read through the stage directions. Sometimes it shows up when I get there because the production schedule is being so tight. When I do prepare, I like to just have a basic understanding of the scene that's going to be performed by the actors. Cartoons and games have a lot of similarities, and they have some differences, but basically it's all character work, and they're responding to something. The more information I have about what happened or what is happening right in that moment, the better the performances are going to be, and it'll be less guesswork. Games, as you know, have a boatload of in-game barks and call-outs and things like that
Mm-hmm.
that have a lot less background for them. Usually it's like you're on a battlefield yelling. But if the actors just yell and there's no motivation behind it as to what they're doing, are they running from a grenade? Are they taking cover, from a machine gun fire? Is there a bomb that's exploding? I think that the Excel documents, although they are very useful, don't always provide enough information.
I could see that. I could see an Excel document not being the most, not being the most useful tool in a situation like that.
Metal Gear is interesting because it was Japanese translated, and I always had someone who spoke Japanese and English with me in the rooms so that they could give me the setup that was. They translated a lot of the dialogue. They translated all the dialogue, but they didn't always translate all of the scene directions. For the first few Metal Gears, we did them to picture, so we had exact reference of what was needed. I think starting with probably Metal Gear 4 and 5 for sure, we had very little reference, visual reference. We did do voice replacement for motion capture that was captured in Japan. So we would have the cinematic scenes that we would have more of a visual idea what was happening, but not everything. It was mostly scripts. And I tell you, the scripts for Metal Gear, they were probably 3 feet high by the time we were done with stuff. It was incredible how much paper we had.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've seen images of like Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto scripts, and they're several feet tall.
Piles and piles and piles and piles of paper.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I know David talked to us again at Renton City Retro and had mentioned that the recording sessions for Metal Gear Solid 4 took like 9 months, is what he said. Is that common?
At least Spider-Man, we started in 2015 and then had a little hiatus, and that was almost a 2-year process.
Oh, wow.
And of course, we're not talking every single day.
Right.
We're talking over a period of 2 years or more sometimes.
What are the kind of situations that kind of require like getting everybody back in the studio? Is it a situation where maybe the audio editor or something is like, hey, we just don't have it, and that's when you bring everybody in? Or are you guys doing like scenes at a time? How does that work?
It's all variable, but mostly Metal Gear was the first game that was like highlighted for its voice work. And part of that, I think, is because we ended up using, David was always with another actor. When he was performing scenes, we would have the two of them together. And that just gives you better response between the two characters. They're actually talking to each other instead of guessing. Now, that's not fiscally the best way to do it, producer-wise. They would rather have us single everybody out and do them individually because you're paying an actor a certain rate for 4 hours.
Right.
And if you're putting in two actors, you're getting half of the content from each of those people. But for Metal Gear, we almost always had to make with the person he was speaking with, unless it was a situation like when Miller would be spouting off all the Fulton recovery instructions, and David's response was, Fulton recovery? So it just depends. Sometimes something's missing. Sometimes there's an audio problem that we'll have to bring people back. Usually it's the massive scripts that we're dealing with that we're needing to record.
That makes sense.
They go quickly. We record up to 200 lines an hour, and I know that Jennifer Hale in one session did record 400 lines in a 4-hour session.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That sounds
but
like
you have to be able to deliver because there's just so much material.
Right. So given the breadth of that material, and given just like conversations that we've had, even with like Quentin Flynn that we recently talked to, or even Cam Clark, they had sort of mentioned that they have like sort of like 3 strikes you're out kind of a deal, where it's like they give you 3 options and then it's kind of on to the next thing. How do you direct somebody when you only have 3 options?
I think it's an awful way to do it. My feeling is if the actor is, if it's a scene and you know what the scene is and they deliver the line once and it's not close to what I need, why would I waste the time of getting two more that are going to be fairly similar to that? So I usually jump in, and sometimes I'll ask for 3 in a row if it's something simple and I know the actor very, very well. But as a bulk, I would say I ask the actors, don't give me 3 in a row because I'm going to jump in and interrupt you.
That makes sense. You mentioned earlier that for the original Metal Gear Solid sessions, you would have everybody kind of come in and record in a group. How frequent were people doing that in video games at the time? I mean, that's a cartoon thing, right?
It was only a cartoon thing. I'm the one who started doing it in the games. Even now, when I have the opportunity, I'm working on a project now that has a young cast, and they just do better when they're all together. So we bring in at least 2 people, sometimes 3. And I know in Spider-Man, when J. Jonah Jameson was, when he had his producer with him, we put the 2 of them in the booth and we got some really incredible stuff. So it still happens. And now with games, particularly now with a lot of the motion capture and performance capture, where it's full performance, we're capturing their physical movements, we're capturing their facial movements, and we're capturing their voice all at the same time, then we have whole teams of actors. Sometimes there's 5 or 6 of them that are hired for the day, and we don't do as much material, but it's much higher quality.
So with all that being said, do you prefer to work in games or do you prefer animation and cartoon work?
Split down the middle for me. It's actually split down the middle. Games, you get immersed in the project and are usually doing it for a week or more at a time. So that's kind of this drive that happens. And then with cartoons, as you said, sometimes I have 12 actors in the room all together, and that's just a different experience, and it's so much fun. But then with cartoons, they're recorded once a week or once every other week. So it's like, do one, wait, do one, wait. I'm the type of person who likes to keep going, likes to keep busy. But as far as the actual job that I do, I would say it's the same. I'm working with actors.
That's awesome. How difficult is it now that facial animation is in the mix? Is it difficult to give somebody direction for the way their eyebrow is twitching versus how they deliver a line?
No, it's still part of an actor. I mean, to me, it's just a physicalization rather than just listening to a voice. I'm very visual when I work with the actors, both in watching them and them being able to watch me or see me, because I'll give a lot of direction just by a look on my face, and it just condenses things and makes it go a little quicker. But we had one character in a facial project whose smile didn't play nice with the skin of the character and the character model, and it looked weird when on the face of the character. So we constantly had to tell him less smiling, less smiling, less smiling, which was hard because it's like you're watching him as an actor and he's got this charm and this great smile, but you have to keep in mind how it looks coming off the rig, off the character.
Surely you're talking about Troy Baker.
Nope.
I'm teasing. He just has a very nice smile.
Who I
He's taking a shot. As far as and we'll get into sort of the Metal Gear specific stuff here in a little bit, but I think as far as just like favorite projects across the board that you've been a part of, is there anything that stands out? And it's totally fine if it's for like unconventional reasons or it's because you were working with a certain person that you enjoyed, but is there anything from your career that maybe you think back on fondly? Do you have any projects that maybe got away? Anything like that?
I really, really, really enjoyed working, and here comes the name Spider-Man again. The team was amazing. I had great opportunities working with them. I worked a lot on the performance capture stage with the cinematic director, pulling the performances out of the actors, and had a lot of opportunities in that regard. And just the massive quantity that we recorded, and with the talent that we had, it was a really special, fun project. And the team there are some of they're just some of the nicest people I've ever worked with. So that was a plus. I really have always enjoyed working with Camouflage. I helped them get started with their Republique phone game that they produced a few years ago. Still have a really great working relationship with Ryan Payton and the team up there as well. I'm currently working on Curious George, which is a blast. It's an animated series, of course. I've just had a blessed career. I mean, I really, really have been blessed to work on a really lot of cool things.
Yeah, I would definitely say so as well.
It is fascinating to watch Frank Welker, who is Curious George. He's Abu in all the Aladdin movies, and he is also Megatron. So that same actor is those characters, and it's just amazing to watch him because you just can see the physicalizations of George sitting there in him as a human being, which I think helps performances. Even when you're in a booth, you have to physicalize your character to the best of the capability within the constraints of the microphone. And that's something I think actors forget sometimes. They just sit down and relax and read. That isn't the cream of the crop actors that are booking everything these days. They're the ones who really become the characters.
That makes a lot of sense. Going back to Renton City Retro for a little bit, one of the things that came up during one of the panels was this idea that maybe in the past, the relationships with the cast and the crew and in the booth were much easier to realize and maybe impacted the work in a positive way, whereas today it's a little different. Things are a little bit more hands-off, a little bit more digital. What would you say to that?
It was so much better. I have a lot of theories on this type of thing. The main thing is, if I'm getting submissions digitally from agents and I like that person's voice, but I don't know that they can listen to me direct. I don't know that they can respond and give me what I need. A lot of times we'll hire an actor based on their digital record and have to replace them because they can't deliver once they're in the booth. They got lucky in that take at home. I actually used to teach voiceover with Charlie Adler years ago, and I stopped just because I didn't have the time to do it. And in the past year or so, I started teaching because of the digital records. These actors get scripts from their agents, a pile of scripts, especially the A+ performers, and even they are guilty of what I'm going to say. Not all of them, but some of them. They just sit down and read them, and they don't put any thought into it. So I started teaching a workshop that is strictly for professional voice actors that is focused on the acting for voiceover and specifically your home reads. You still have to imagine what you're responding to. You still have to imagine what you're wearing, imagine what the character looks like, what the world they live in looks like. You have to build it off of imagination, not just start talking because there's words on a page. And that's something I think that gets forgotten. And I think that when we did have more in-house auditions, that the director could guide that, and they could give them a jumping off point, and they could push them a little bit further than just reading it. And I still try to get my clients to give me, especially if it's series regulars or big characters in a project, there's still auditions for those. Not all the time, not for every project, but I certainly like to push to get actual auditions done for a portion of the characters at least.
So sort of in the way that David was Solid Snake for so long and then was cut, how frequently do you have A-listers portray a certain role for X number of years and then not come back?
That was a very unique situation. I must say I didn't agree with it. I think that it should have stayed the same. They had their reasoning around it. Basically, it wasn't the same Snake. It was a different. It was the guy that they made into fake Snake, but
Right.
I think that I think it just could have been handled a little differently.
For sure. Yeah, and we definitely don't want to spend too much time on that, just because I know you've spoken to that in the past and all that. Along those lines, I did before we kind of dive into Metal Gear stuff. Our listeners really enjoy hearing a little bit more about the individuals, like the actual human beings that are behind some of these names in the credits that we see every day.
Uh-huh.
And so I wanted to ask you, Kris, what do you do for fun when you're not directing people to speak properly?
Well, I was an equestrian for years. I had horses, and unfortunately, they've all gone now. I live on a mini ranch where I have some goats and sheep and chickens. I've got a couple dogs that are in really intense behavioral training right now, which is a lot of fun. I like to go camping, and my annual guilty pleasure, which I will say publicly, is I go to the Jimmy Buffett concert in Vegas every year with a bunch of friends. We have a blast.
That's amazing. It's not a guilty pleasure because it's just a pleasure. You should just enjoy it and own it. That's
so
great.
We're guilty as charged.
All right, so we are transitioning now into full-fledged Metal Gear mode. Kris, I wanted to start us off just by asking, how in the world did you get involved with the very first Metal Gear Solid?
The first Metal Gear, I was still working at Hanna-Barbera, and I think I don't know how I got away with taking all that time off. But I got a call out of the blue from a lady named Keiko Ono. And Keiko was working for a production company. I actually think I was still working at Hanna-Barbera because they were calling around to the different animation studios looking for voice directors to interview. And they called me and asked me to come in and meet with them. And we met. Their company was located at a property in Hollywood that apparently was Valentino's old compound. It wasn't huge or anything, big Spanish-style house with a couple of buildings around it that were used as their production offices. And I went and I interviewed, and pretty soon they just called and said, "We'd like to use you." And I said, "Sure." So that's how I got involved. We had no idea what Metal Gear was. We had no idea what we were starting or what it would grow into. It was quite amazing.
History was made in that moment, because I feel like in a lot of ways we owe a massive thank you to you for all of these characters that we love, because the sounds are so like deeply ingrained in who these characters are.
They're iconic. They're just iconic.
Right. I wanted to ask you from kind of getting your start to the last game in the series that you directed. How difficult was it early on versus how difficult maybe did it cease to become to sort of have this cultural difference between these action heroes that are written to be like American action heroes voiced by Americans in a Japanese game? Were there ever any sort of like cultural kind of I don't know, pushback?
There was, especially at the beginning. We were instructed basically that it needed to be the same as the Japanese. There weren't a lot of dialogue issues that sounded funky on the first game, but there were the snowmobile.
Mm-hmm.
When it was either I forget who the two characters were. One was Meryl, I think, that ended up on the back of the snowmobile. Oh, and one was Otacon.
Yep.
It was either or. If Meryl died, then Otacon got in the back of the snowmobile, and if it was Meryl, it was Meryl. And there was definitely a little love interest between Snake and the character, and so the dialogue was kind of weird talking to Otacon that way. But they wouldn't let us change it. They would not let us change it.
And boy, are we glad that they didn't, because it has made for an extremely compelling moment in that game. Kris, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to record specifically the game? We've heard tell that that the recordings took place in the living room of a house. Can you describe that for us?
What was interesting about it was we had a lot of people in there, and there was no. Normally, you have a sound booth where the director and the engineer sits recording the dialogue, and then you have the actor booth, which is a soundproof booth where the actors are, and you speak to them by pushing down a button and letting the speakers go open into the room. We had no booth in this mansion. We were recording in a living room on the first Metal Gear game. So that posed some challenges in that everybody that was in that room had to be completely silent when the actors were talking.
Yeah, why were you guys recording in a home versus a studio for that?
Because the production company we were working with had never done anything voiceover wise. And it was a home sound studio basically, where they used it for screenings and things like that. And they thought, oh, well, we have all this equipment, let's just do it here. Then when Metal Gear became such a success and Metal Gear 2 came along, they asked me to come back and direct again. And I said, sure. However, a few of the rules are going to change. And I, of course, insisted that they used a proper studio.
Good on your part.
Yeah.
Did you have do you have any favorite games in the series that maybe stand out, like that you've worked on? Because again, I mean, you've worked on everything from like Metal Gear Acid to Portable Ops to like
all of them.
every
Yeah,
spinoff. Yeah. Is there one that sticks out as a good experience?
I think four. Four was pretty emotional in itself, and also with me personally. These are characters that I've loved for years, and the actors that were in it are mostly good friends of mine, very good friends of mine. And we were keeping a Kris cry total. And because there were several times in that script that the actors actually brought me to tears with their performances. One in particular was when Meryl was getting married, and Campbell went into the preparation area where she was getting ready to go out and get married, and was talking to her about their relationship. And Paul Eiding is a dear, dear friend of mine, and his daughter and my son grew up together. We had a play group when they were all little kids. And, we spent every holiday together, every birthday party, Halloween, everything. And these kids grew up until they got to be teenagers, and they kind of went their own separate ways. But the day we recorded the scene with he and Meryl was the day his daughter left for college.
Oh,
and,
no.
Oh my God, I'm choking up right now. So that I was just bawling. And this is when I met Ryan Payton, was during Metal Gear 4. He was the producer from Japan who could speak Japanese and English, who was my direct contact with Konami for that game. And he also became a very dear friend of mine. But he was just making fun of me right and left because I would just choke up and tear up. And we were told it was the last Metal Gear, that there weren't going to be any more. So as we're finishing that particular project, it got me, because this had been a project I've been working on since the beginning of my freelance career.
I think we all thought it was going to be the last Metal Gear game. So at the end of every game, it seems like. So I can definitely understand. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll have to. We're actually going to have Paul on next week, and so I would love to ask him what it was like to deliver that scene.
Ask him what he did when he first met me. We were at somebody's birthday party, and I was introduced to him. This is Paul Eiding, and he took my hand and brought it up to his mouth like he was going to kiss my hand. He licked it. He licked it like long lick. Yeah, so I bring that up every now and again just to remind him.
That's amazing. I think because Paul's been in a ton of cartoons, so surely you guys met far before Metal Gear, correct?
We met before Metal Gear. Yeah, we met Paul because my first husband was in Gordon Hunt's acting class, and Paul was a member of the class, and that's when we all realized that we had children the same age.
It's
so
weird.
I knew Paul 15 years before Metal Gear. No,
it's
maybe not that long. Maybe about 6 years before Metal Gear.
oh, gotcha. Yeah, because of the age for four. Yeah, it's very surreal talking to everybody involved because we keep getting these little pieces of the puzzle kind of filling out as we continue to have these conversations, and it feels like it's making the world even smaller as we have these interviews.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
but in a good way, of course. I wanted to ask because everybody to this point that we've spoken to, David included, have hardly spent any time with Kojima. Have you spent any time speaking with him at all, or even through an interpreter or anything like that?
A little bit, but not much. He didn't come to the sessions very often. The times I have spoken with him have been very pleasant and fun. But he doesn't speak English, and I don't speak Japanese. So they have been probably shorter conversations. It certainly wasn't a sit down and chat kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell a funny story.
By all means.
Kojima came, probably it was Metal Gear Sons of Liberty. Solid was one, right?
Yep.
It was probably Sons of Liberty. He came out to the studio, wanted to meet David, and came to the studio, and it was like watching a rock star walk into the room. He had was wearing black. He's very, very stylish. He had a a black trench coat on that was open, and he had his entourage with him. And we were waiting for the next actor, and I was standing in the room, and I was playing with a yo-yo because we were just waiting. And he walked up to me and bowed a little bit and held his hand out for me to hand him the yo-yo. So I did, and he did a trick. And then I nodded back to him and held my hand out. He handed me back the yo-yo, and I went, zoom, spin, 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 and he looked at me and bowed and walked away.
That's amazing.
It was really funny.
That's so good.
Yeah, I mean, he came to a few of the sessions that Kiefer Sutherland was at, but he resides in Japan. He's making the Japanese version the same time we're making the American version. So there wasn't a lot of him being at sessions or anything like that. He'd stop by once in a while, but not very often.
Yeah, it seems to be sort of the corroborated story, I guess, across the board with everybody. What was it like, speaking of Kiefer Sutherland, what was it like working with Kiefer on 5?
I loved it. He ended up being great. He was great to work with, very professional, very on top of it. He had a hard job to do. And, I just kept in mind that, it was a separate thing from what we've done before.
With Kiefer's background, was it difficult for him to transition into this video game world, or was it just a super quick, easy fit?
It was pretty easy. Basically, acting is acting, and it's being recorded in a different medium. We did have to do a lot of facial capture with him, and the difficult part was, and everybody had difficulty with this, not just him. The difficult part was we had to do it to picture. And so because the cinematic scenes had already been done by motion capture actors in Japan, when you think about it, if you are watching a movie and the character turns his head to screen right, he's actually turning his head to the left, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these guys had to do within certain limits, because they can't turn their head all the way to the left or they'd be off camera. But within certain limits, they had to perform to the bodies of the actors on the screen backwards.
Oh my God.
And it was difficult, and it was hard for him at the beginning, and a little frustrating, I think, because it was different than anything I think he'd ever really participated in before, having to do that backwards. And everybody had difficulty with it. But once he caught on, which was very quickly, then it was smooth sailing.
I feel like I need to ask, are you involved in any way in Death Stranding that Kojima Productions is putting out?
I am not.
Okay, good to know. I wanted that was nice, and with it,
I've heard he's pretty much doing it himself.
Gotcha. Yeah, with the trailer just having come out yesterday, I felt like
Oh, I
I
haven't
should
seen it.
throw it on the list.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's very it's like 9 minutes of the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. So
Does it say 9? Is that all?
yeah. It's a little long, but yeah. I wanted to ask, Kris, out of all of the time that you've spent with these characters and
I
these
just saw
cast
your next
members,
question.
yeah, has the statute of limitations expired on Eva's voice actress?
No, and I will
Oh
never ever.
no.
I have made a promise to the actress, and I know her reasonings behind it, and it's a secret.
Very nice. Do you think she would ever do like a secret interview?
No,
Dang. Okay. One
no,
day.
I don't actually. I don't know that I would be able to find her anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she
Interesting.
moved. She moved out of Los Angeles area.
Yeah, when we spoke with David, it's funny because I'd completely forgotten about this. And then when we spoke with David, he paused for a second whenever he was listing cast members that he loved to work with, and kind of composed himself, and didn't name anything at all, even vaguely related to Eva's voice actress. So I thought it kind of kicked it back up and into our brains, where I was like, oh, that's
It's
right.
actually kind of
Nobody
fun
knows.
having this secret. Being one of maybe 10 people in the world who know who it is.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's
that's
awesome.
kind of a little secret club that we have.
Yeah, it's like knowing the recipe for Coca-Cola or something.
Exactly. Who voices Eva?
It's awesome.
Not
So
gonna tell you.
I figured I had to take a bullet. So
Cool.
everybody, I'm sure, kind of pesters you about David Hayter, but we've got kind of like a long laundry list of fan favorites in our back pocket, and a lot of those folks include people like the fellow who portrays Kazuhira Miller, Robin Atkin Downs. Can
That's
you tell me a
Robin.
little bit? Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with him?
I've known Robin for years and years. And not only is he a good friend, but he's an amazing actor. And Kaz Miller was indeed one of my favorite characters in Metal Gear, mainly because he talked ad nauseum, and he talked about millions of things in the tiniest detail. If you ever want to know about Mkeli Mbembe, you can call up Robin and ask him. I'm sure he will be happy to wax poetic about that. He had so much dialogue to do in the game that he would literally walk in the room, and I'd look at him and I go, "Shut up, Miller." So and that's been a joke between us. He will actually call me and leave me 10-minute messages about Fulton Recovery.
Oh
So
man,
he definitely was one of my favorite characters to record.
is he as into hamburgers in real life as his character?
I don't think so. Steak
That's
and lobster, maybe, but not hamburgers. Margaritas, yeah.
gotcha. That's amazing. I wanted to ask as well, and I probably should have asked you this a little bit sooner, but kind of along these same lines, um, do you often hang out with these voice actors sort of in your day-to-day life outside of the studio?
A lot of us are very good friends. I live kind of farther away, so I don't get to see everyone as often as I'd like. But yeah, there are several of them that we get together with frequently, and it's a very tight community for the most part. I think people in voiceover do it because they want to be doing it, where we don't get a lot of the TV and film people involved very often that are harder to. They're more private. I guess I'd say.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, especially considering that I guess games, kind of relatively, like on a macro level, I feel like games are still kind of growing up right now as an industry.
They indeed are. They indeed are. In the big scheme of Hollywood, I call animation the redheaded stepchild, because it's like it's animation and games. We don't pay as much, and TV animation there are residuals still, but in games there aren't. There's bonus pay now for a number of sessions, but it's not how Hollywood was conceived, basically, with residual structure. So a lot of people just aren't interested in doing it. I'm very fortunate that I have the great actors to pull from that I do.
Yeah, I know. Even speaking to some of the folks on the panels at the convention that we were just at, that kind of came up, which was like, hey, how frequent is it that folks are able to make 100% of their living through video games? And I know that it kind of shocked some of the folks attending the panel to kind of hear from different folks, kind of the reality of that.
if you do one game a year, you're not going to make a living doing it. But if you're working as often as someone like a Yuri Lowenthal, you can make a pretty good living doing it. You know, and he does. These actors do more than just video games. They also do some commercials. Some of them do promos. Some of them have animated series as well. So you definitely can make a living doing voiceover, but you have to be one of the players that's working all the time.
Right. Yeah, and Kris, I guess in your role, do you get called in? I know you get called in for cartoon shows and major video games, but do you get called in for smaller things like promos as well?
I don't do promos and I don't do commercials.
Okay.
I'm just not interested at all. And there's too many cooks in the soup, and it's not as creative as you'd think it would be to me as a director. It's just something I'm not really interested in doing.
Right. Yeah, I know after working sort of in production life, kind of on the TV side of things, I know in general when it comes to those kinds of things, it seems like they just kind of throw it at like an AP to like knock out in the corner of the room, sort of where there's
Sometimes,
margins.
yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I do occasionally like trailers for the games that we're working on. We'll do trailers for E3 and stuff. And that typically happens during one of the regular sessions. Sometimes I'll do little promo clips for the cartoon shows I'm working on, but again, that would be something that would happen when the actor is already at the session and Turner needs a quick little blurb. So it's not something that I do solo or outside of the major games I do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird to add to the small world kind of situation that seems to be occurring the more that we interview people. It's weird because I actually spent several years working in Atlanta, working with a lot of Turner people. So hearing you talk about Turner, I'm like, oh man, it's bridging the gap.
Yes, that's funny. Yeah, Turner bought Hanna-Barbera right before I went freelance. And I have continued to have a relationship with the company through Cartoon Network. So in essence, I never left. I just do stuff as a freelancer now instead of on staff.
Well, perfect. I know. So we're hoping to get quite a few other voice actors involved. I wanted to see if I could just like rapid fire throw some names out and see what your experience level relationship is. I know like Lori Allen, for instance, came up when we spoke with David. Do you have a good relationship with her?
Lori's great. Yeah. We have a common interest in rescue dogs.
Oh, that's very nice. It's very jarring for me to think that the boss is also the voice of Mr. Krabs' daughter from SpongeBob.
You know, hey, that's pretty funny.
It's weird once you start kind of noticing people's track records. They're like funny little pockets where you're like, what in the world? How is that person?
Well, Megatron is Curious George.
Yeah, that's insane. So my mother actually loved watching a bunch of old cartoons with me whenever I was a kid. So I kind of share some of these interviews with her, and she's always like, "Man, it's so weird how some of these people are connected." And I was like, "Yeah, I know."
It's a large talent pool, but it's a tight knit community. I would say it really is a tight knit community.
Do you find that it all kind of I feel like I probably know the answer to this, but do you feel like it's all sort of locked within like the greater Los Angeles area, or is that community a little bit broader than that?
I have used actors from other parts of the U.S. and or world, but however, you need to be in LA if you're going to be doing it on a regular basis. All the production companies are here. They don't pay for travel. If we're looking for someone specific and they, for example, live in New York or something, we would do a phone patch with them. But it's kind of cost ineffective for the companies to do that unless they absolutely have to. So it's not something that is pursued in my world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because it's not like it's very different than like doing a phone interview or like an NPR piece, long distance or something like that. It's a lot more kind of hands-on.
Usually you have to rent 2 studios if you want to hear good sound quality. We'd have to have a studio here in Los Angeles and a studio wherever they are.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know we get a lot of questions from listeners that are like, hey, if I'm interested to get into voice acting, what should I do? And it feels like the point that keeps coming up in every one of these interviews is get your ass to Los Angeles.
Take an acting class. Take a lot of acting classes. We don't necessarily just hire voices. We hire character actors who are good at voice acting. And I can't emphasize the acting enough. People think, oh, it's just voiceover. It is probably more difficult sometimes than on camera because you don't have your face to rely on. You don't have a lift of an eyebrow or a look, a dirty look. You have to portray all of that through the voice.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know. I feel like I keep referring to this, but it was so recent that I feel like it's kind of top of mind. Cam and David, when we spoke with them, kind of talked about how you need to have sort of a portfolio of characters before you begin sort of the process of getting involved in voice acting.
Definitely.
Yeah, is that your experience?
I get to hire one actor to do 3 voices for the same price. If I have a lot of characters, especially in a game when you have all the incidental characters, you need to be able to provide me with 3 characters I need, not just only have 3 in your repertoire.
Gotcha. Yeah, what's the number one mistake that you see like young voice talents kind of stepping into over and over again?
Reading.
Just sort of not
Reading.
giving a performance to it.
Not connecting with the sides, not putting themselves in the moment of the scene. Like I said, it's an acting job, and you have to have in your brain, you can't start talking because you see words on a piece of paper. You have to start talking because something happened to your character or someone said something to your character. If you don't know what that is, you need to make something up in your mind so that it gives you the energy level and the response of responding to something.
I wanted to ask really quickly too, kind of before we get to the conclusion here. Do you have any characters that have stood out from the previous games that you've worked on that really resonate with you within Metal Gear? Is there anybody that you really dig?
Of the Metal Gear characters?
Yeah, just any of the cast members from either living or fictional. Is there any character that you're just like, oh man, I love that character?
Snake, of course. I love Revolver Ocelot, and Revolver Ocelot was actually played by my ex-husband. So there's a little folklore there as well. I just think that the character is so flamboyant and so insane that it was just a lot of fun to help create that. Oh gosh, Fat Man comes to mind, played by Barry Dennen. I don't know why that popped into my head, but that was a lot of fun as well. The big boss from 4 was played by this amazing actor named Richard Doyle, and I think he brought a lot to that role. And, and all of them, Liquid and Jennifer's characters, Debbie Mae West's characters, and Campbell, of course. Campbell is like my uncle. I just think that that's an amazing character as well. I don't want to leave anybody out, so all of them, but those are the ones that come to mind right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I did want to actually ask you about working with Patrick. When did you guys end up? And by all means, like, feel free to tell me to screw myself. But did you guys end up separating? Should I move forward?
No. I was teasing.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure. Did you guys end up separating like in the midst of working on the series, or was it after 4 concluded?
We separated before he got cast.
Oh wow! So just at the very beginning.
My son was 4 when we split up, and my son was 10 when Metal Gear came out. So yeah, he was. It didn't work out for us as a couple, but he is a brilliant actor, and it never got in the way of things.
I know some people I know the question always comes up too, even when talking about like bands, like the White Stripes. Everybody's like, "Oh man, they used to be married. What's that like?" So it's interesting to hear that everything went well.
The part of Patrick that I love was, his caricaturing of things. He was an amazing actor, and he just owned that role. He owned it.
Yeah, I think his depiction of Ocelot is definitely like a big fan favorite, even amongst our listeners. So that's awesome to hear. Well, Kris, we're coming up on time. I just wanted to ask you to kind of conclude. Do you have any upcoming projects that you're willing to share, or that you're able to share, or that you want to promote?
I have 3 that are amazing that you're going to have to watch out on Twitter for. One of them should be coming out this summer, I think. It's a virtual reality project, so that's all I can say. And then I have two more that I'm just starting on, actually three more that I'm just starting on, or in the middle of. One of them that I just found out that they just asked me to do, I actually squealed when they asked me, because it's just characters that I really love and haven't had the opportunity to play with them before. So I am still doing a lot of different projects, and they're going to be good. They're going to be good.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that you're still super like happy and engaged and like loving the work that you're doing. So
how can I not? It's like the best job in the world.
Well, cool. Where can folks find you online? Is it just Twitter? Is that the best place to find you if they're interested in...
You can find Twitter, yeah, pretty much on Twitter. I have an Instagram account, but I don't really. I'm not active on social media that much. I just say Twitter.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kris. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hop on and chat with us about all of these things. And yeah, we're just super thankful that that Debbie was even able to connect us. We had a really good time speaking with Debbie. I think it was a week or two ago. So.
And where do I find this?
So the show is going to be, the show is currently on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, like we're everywhere. But yeah, we come out every Monday. So
that's fun. I didn't even know about you guys. So this is pretty neat.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this.
Thank you for including me.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect. So yeah, I'll be in touch over email, and from all of our listeners to you, thank you so very much. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Sam and Alessio.
Just a buck.